We have our friend Ambassador Danny Danon from the State of Israel. Ambassador, how are you this evening, sir?
Thank you, Mark, for having me again. Good evening.
It's always an honor, always a pleasure. Good evening. But that said, we saw another Kristallnacht take place in Amsterdam. It was a horrific sight that the Jewish Israelis who went to the football game there in Amsterdam, they were trapped, they were set up by literally thousands of anti-Semites. What can you tell us about this?
Well, we are monitoring the situation. We opened an emergency situation room, and we are actually helping the Israelis who are in Amsterdam to come back to Israel. But you described it very accurately. It was a horrible pogrom in Europe in 2024 when Jews were actually chased in the streets of Amsterdam. Some of them were actually thrown into the canals, stabbing, beating, and it was all orchestrated. That when you ask yourself why it happened, it's part of the incitement campaign against Israel. All the lies that people are spreading against us, they blame us for genocide, starvation, all of those lies that create the atmosphere of hate. But we also have to say a word about the authorities in the Dutch, that they were not effective. It's unacceptable that for hours people were calling to the police, no one showed up, and that's why we saw those horrible sights last night.
Now, the Prime Minister, your government, has sent in soldiers and others in coordination with the Dutch government to get the Israeli citizens out of there, right?
Yes, we were planning to send some aircraft of the military, but we realized that we have enough commercial planes, so now everybody is coming home with the commercial flights. We still have people who are wounded, who were stabbed, that are still in hospital. We hope that they will recover soon and come back. But, it's not only the Dutch. What we're seeing now in Europe, you see radical Muslims, and we have to say it, Mark, not to hide it, radical Muslims who are taking over the streets. And the authorities have like a weird mentality. They're trying to appease them. Let me give you an example. In Belgium, they had a legislation that you are not allowed to arrest anyone after 10 p.m. So imagine what those criminals did. They were plotting and attacking synagogues and Jews after 10 p.m. So just now they started to realize that they have to change that ridiculous legislation. So I think the authorities have to wake up because today it's attacks against Jews. Tomorrow it will be attacks against everyone over there.
Israel's a tiny country. You got 6-7 million Jews in that country, about half the Jews in the world. You're surrounded by enemies. The Western world is loaded with enemies against the State of Israel. The capitals, these governments, many of them talking about boycotting Israel, cutting off arms to Israel. And all you're doing is trying to survive. You're fighting the terrorists who attack you first and continue to attack you. Israel's not allowed to win, and the Jewish people are not allowed to survive. That seems to be the bottom line, doesn't it?
Well, we realize that we have to win. We have no other choice. It's not like if we lose the war, we're going to go somewhere else. We have no other place. That's why we are determined. That's why we're actually winning the war. And like you mentioned, we are fighting 7 fronts now. Tiny military, tiny country, fighting Iran, fighting Hezbollah, fighting the Houthis from Yemen, militias from Iraq in Syria, and Hamas in Gaza. But we are determined to win because we don't have any other choice. But it's hard. It has been a very difficult year. And still, 400 days after the massacre of October 7th, we still have 101 hostages. This week I brought to the UN Mia Shem. She was in captivity for 50 days. And she shared with the UN ambassadors her story about what she had to suffer there in the tunnels of Hamas. Unfortunately, they didn't care much. They care more about UNRWA and other issues. They don't care about suffering of Jews in the UN. But we are determined to continue until we bring back all of them, all of the hostages.
The country Qatar announced today, after the election of President Trump, that they're going to send the billionaire leaders of Hamas out of their country. Timing is very interesting. But Qatar could direct Hamas, which it really is the main funder in support of Hamas, and it lies to the Western world, and buys all these lobbyists in the United States. It runs all these sporting events to try and mainstream itself in the whole world, but it is a terrorist regime that funds terrorism. Qatar could direct Hamas to release those hostages, including the American hostages, don't you think?
Well, first, I wouldn't buy it, so fast. Let's wait and see where those terrorists will be in a week's time. I think they are threatening them that they will expel them in order to apply pressure on them because they want to be involved in the negotiations. But I don't think it will happen so soon. And as you mentioned, they're playing a double game. For years they wonder why they keep funding Hamas, and at the same time they give money to construction of Gaza. What is the logic behind it? To sponsor Hamas and reconstruct Gaza. Anyone knows that it will lead to another war against Israel. So I think they have to choose. They have to choose if they want to belong to the Western world or they want to belong to the axis of evil, which is led by Iran. As of now, they are in the middle.
Mm-hmm. And this war that's going on all around you, really launched by Iran through its surrogates, funded by, in part, quite frankly, the United States of America, directly and indirectly, and so forth and so on. I know Israel's ready for whatever may come. Do you think Iran's attitude is going to change a little bit with the change of administrations, or it's wait and see? I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just asking.
No, I don't think, look what we saw today that was revealed, that they actually tried to assassinate President Trump before the election. So, they try to do the same in Israel, using their proxies and fund chaos. And I think that the new administration will have to put them in the right position and should cripple the economy of Tehran. Today they spend $7 billion a year on their proxies promoting chaos all over the world. So I think if there will be real sanctions, they will have less money to spend on terrorism, and I'm sure that President Trump will lead into that direction.
Yeah, because those sanctions were his. And those sanctions against the Palestinian terrorists, whether they be in parts of Jerusalem or Judea and Samaria or elsewhere, and the sanctions against UNRWA and the Taylor Force Act and all these things, these are things that President Trump did and that had been reversed. So I've got to believe, or at least I think, that he is going to reinstate these things, and especially, as you just pointed out, Iran's trying to murder him. And they've been trying to murder him. I can't believe he's going to take that sitting down. What do you think?
Well, I'm sure you cannot ignore it. We saw the method they used here in the U.S., paying criminals to try to target the president. They did the same in Israel with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yeah. We found their activities also paying criminals online in order to attack the prime minister. So I think today we should realize with whom we are dealing, and we are strong. We have to understand that. They are threatening all day long, and they make a lot of noise, but we have the strength, we have the determination, and we can defeat them, and I'm sure it will happen.
I believe, Mr. Ambassador, honest to God, if you folks were free to take out their oil supplies, to take out their nuke sites, and to take out the center of that government, it would fold. The people there do not like that government. It is a police state. I'd say 70-80% of them would like nothing more than to see it disappear. Isn't that your sense that the people of Iran, these Persian people, these good people, they want nothing to do with this government?
Absolutely. We remember the days, before the revolution, that you had a direct flight from Tel Aviv to Tehran. We supported their economy. We shared a lot of the same ideas, and we appreciated the Iranian people. But since the revolution, they are being held by this radical regime. All the wealth is going to support terrorism and building the IRGC. They spend billions on UAVs, and they're sending them now to Russia to attack Ukraine. And I think the Iranians are fed up. They cannot speak up, they cannot demonstrate, but I'm sure they are fed up.
Finally, because I know you need to go, talking to Ambassador Danny Danon, real friend of the United States and me and my family as well. Mr. Ambassador, what is it like sitting in an organization where Israel is targeted day in and day out by its members, or so many of them? What is it like sitting there and surrounded by so many anti-Semitic regimes and and regimes that would like nothing more than to see the destruction of Israel. It can't be a pleasant day every day.
No, it's not pleasant, but Mark, I chose to come again to the same position. I'm the first Israeli ever to serve twice in this position at the UN, because after October 7th, I realized that we have to stand up, we have to speak up, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm determined. I'm determined to stand up every day, even though I know sometimes that, they will vote against us, but at least they will hear the truth. At least we will show them, the facts. And also it's important for our allies, like the United States and other democracies, that they will realize they cannot sit idly by. They should lead and they should be active. And I believe that hopefully one day we'll be able to reform this institution, the United Nations.
Just so you know, I see it's reporting. I mean, I don't know the accuracy. It is, after all, the media. But they are reporting that President Trump includes to significantly increase sanctions against Iran. I think the biggest mistake they make, quite frankly, is to try and assassinate him, because I think he's pretty damn pissed off, to be perfectly honest with you, Mr. Ambassador. Well, Mr. Ambassador, have a great Shabbat. We love you on this program. You're a dear friend of the country.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
You take care of yourself.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good man. Really good man.